All right. So tonight's topic, you guys, is a super fun one. And we're getting everybody in. You can see each other. Let me go ahead and get us. There we are. So welcome, you guys. This is Wisdom Soup. And Wisdom Soup is a community of people who are interested in topics around spirituality. We're a spiritual community. We talk about all things woo. And we've been gathering together now for, I think we're literally coming up on 5 years now. And some of you have been with us this whole time, which is just amazing. And we started out in Bellevue, Washington, but now with COVID and going online, people have joined us, this community from all over, really all over the world, from all over the place. And yeah, we have talked about, if you look back, if you go on a meetup and you check our past topics, you'll see we literally talk about everything from, to quantum stuff, to dragons and fairies, to past lives, to dream interpretation. Like if it's woo and spiritual and interesting, we cover it. So our speaker for tonight, someone I'm very excited to introduce you to, and I got to have a fun conversation with him before and plan this evening. So his name is Robert Snow. He goes by Bob. And he was in the Indianapolis Police Department for 38 years. And in the time he was everything, he ended as a captain, but he'd also been the executive officer of the police department, the captain of detectives, and the commander of the homicide branch. So this is a guy who has a lot of background in being a detective and uncovering things. So he has also been a published writer for over 30 years and has 20 books published. So most of them are written so that people can really understand law enforcement and protect themselves better and their loved ones. But this book that we're talking about now is right up our alley. And it is about an experience he had where someone dared him to have a past life regression and how that challenged his worldview and the worldview of everybody that knew him. So I would love to introduce you to Robert or Bob Snow. Let me bring him in. Here you go. Hi, Bob. So thanks so much for joining us.
Hi. Well, thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. And can you turn up your audio just a little bit? Can you guys hear him okay? Or is that just my mic? Is it down low? Oh, it's me. You're good. You're good. Never mind.
All right. Well, as Ann said, I was a police officer for 38 years and I served a lot of capacities there. But here's enough, I never really wanted to be a police officer. When I was growing up, that thought never entered my mind. The only thing I ever wanted to be, and this is from the age of 4 and 5, I wanted to be a writer. When I was a little boy, like 4 or 5 people asked me, what do you want to be? I'd say, I want to be a writer. And of course, everybody pat your head. That's like saying you want to be president. Sure, that's nice and everything. But I always did. I always want to be a writer. But I got drafted when I was 18 during the Vietnam War, and I went in and served my 4 years. Then I got out, and I needed a job. Basically, I mean, being a writer, saying you want to be there is nice, but being a writer and living indoors is not always synonymous because you have to be an established writer to make enough money to live on. So my brother at this time was also, but he had just joined the Indianapolis Police Department because, again, this is 1968 and it was during the height of the Vietnam War, and they were desperate for candidates for the police department. So he said, well, come on down, try it for a while, see if you like it. So I did, and I went and joined the police department. And it turned to be a very fortuitous thing to do because not only was it a good job, it was a good job, it paid well, benefits, but also gave me a lot of information as a writer, tons of information. But the one thing about being a professional writer is you can't just be a writer. You have to also be a reader. You have to not just write, but you have to read all the time. You have to read from not just your area, because I write almost all of my stuff is law enforcement, which is what I know. And so, but I read from all different areas. And I belonged to a number of book clubs a number of years ago. And one time I saw a book in the book club notice that said there's a book called Coming Back by Dr. Raymond Moody. Dr. Moody had done a number of books on near-death experiences, but he had a friend who was a psychologist who did past life regressive therapy, and she talked him into undergoing a past life regression therapy, and he did. So I ordered the book. By the way, obviously I ordered the book and read it. And anyway, he did. He went to 8 past lives, and very well-written book, very colorful past lives. But at the very end, he says, "Yeah, I don't know." it might be true, probably more my imagination. And that's kind of the way I felt about it. It's a nice thing to say, it looks fun and everything, but it's not probably not true. So anyway, I just forgot about the book, went on to other reading. A few months later, I'm at a party and I'm talking to a lady. She was a police detective, Kathy Raymond was her name, the police department. She was also a practicing psychologist. She had her own practice as a psychologist, along with being a police detective. And we were just making small talk about movies we'd seen and television programs. And we started talking about books. And I remembered this book. And I told her about this book I read. She said, well, what did you think of it? And I told her how, it was interesting, but it's mostly bull. There's no such thing as past lives. And past life regression is just your imagination. And you're under hypnosis and they're drawing up visions for you from your subconscious. It's mostly just your imagination. Anyway, I think I was a little obnoxious. I'd been late during the party. I'd been drinking. A little obnoxious, I think. And I didn't realize at the time that Kathy did past life regression in her business. And I think I got probably a little obnoxious for it. So finally got to the point where she says, well, why don't you try it? You think it's so foolish. I said, I'm not going to try it. Why would I want to do that? She said, oh, you're scared. Hey, you don't want to ask a man if he's scared. You're going to say no. Anyway, it ended up, I finally said, okay, I'll do it. Show you how stupid it is. It's just foolishness. So anyway, the next day I wake up and I'm a little more sober and clear-minded. And I'm not. She'd give me that night, but would give me a card with the name of a psychologist who did pass regression. So, but I thought, I'm not doing this. It's stupid. I'm not going to do it. So I didn't think about it. But then I'd start running into Kathy. And every time I ran into her, she'd say, have you made the appointment yet? And I'd make up some excuse about, well, I've had 3 meetings and I had to do this and that and the other, and why I hadn't done it yet. Well, before this, it seemed like I run into Kathy maybe once a month. After this, it's like every day. I see her. It's like, damn. And I'm trying to figure out how I can avoid her. And because I knew if I stopped me, she's going to ask about the meeting. I was like, dang, there she is again. Finally, it got old enough. I said, oh, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make the appointment. I'm going to go. I'm going to take my own tape recorder. I'm going to tape this session. I'm going to show Kathy absolutely nothing happens. It's all people, weak-minded people, usually with a wild imagination. So I made the appointment with a lady. Her name was Dr. Mary Ellen Griffith. Very nice lady. Very nice. Funny, she had a kind of a funny sing-songy voice, a very soothing type of sing-songy voice. But anyway, I'd ask her if it's okay if I taped the session. She said, sure, no problem. And interesting enough, she asked why I was interested in past life. I didn't know if her and Kathy had talked or not. I assumed they had. I just told her I was kind of interested in it. It sounds like, something I'd be interested in. She said, okay, sit down. So I said, and like all psychologists, she had an old wooden desk and she had a couch, like a couch type thing you could lay on if you want to. I didn't do that. I sat down. I thought, no, this is foolish stuff anyway. I'm sitting down. I'm not going to lay down like I need some kind of psychotherapy. So anyway, she started talking to each other, and she asked me about a lot of things. She asked me about my college graduation, and she asked about high school and junior high. Now, I could see what she's doing. She kept asking about things younger and younger and younger. And I thought, I just made the decision on the way there. I was going to cooperate 100%. I was going to do whatever she asked so I could show Kathy how foolish all this was. So anyway, I'm answering all of her questions, telling her all my memories from all these different things. So she finally said, are you ready? And I said, yep, I'm ready. She said, okay. She says, now close your eyes and see if you can see a balloon. Now I closed my eyes and there was a purple blob in my eyelid. I knew it was just a light coming out through the window to my right. I mean, there was no balloon, but just a purple blob. But she said, okay. Now she said, imagine yourself getting in the balloon. Okay. I said, okay. So it was just, now take yourself up. I imagine something. I said, it's interesting because I tried to imagine myself going up, but I thought that at bottom of my eyelids, it looked like I'd see little points of light down below. But I figured it was just glare off the floor. It wasn't really anything. So anyway, she told me, imagine flying this balloon. So I'm doing it. I'm doing my best to imagine flying in a balloon. And so she said, okay, now here's the spot. Let's stop somewhere. Take the balloon down. She said, there's a control of your head. Reach up and pull it, bring the balloon down. So I tried to imagine doing that, and nothing happened. And I told her that we went through this at least a dozen times. She was awful patient. She didn't seem the least bit irritated or aggravated with me. But it went a dozen times. Take the balloon down, and then nothing happened. I mean, I'm not going to imagine something just for her. I'm just telling her what happened. But she didn't see much of that. She said, well, these are obviously places you don't want to stop. She said, I'll tell you what, see if you can imagine a mountain in your mind. So okay, I imagine a mountain. She said, okay, now go to the mountain. So I imagined myself going to this mountain and landing. He says, what do you see? Now, interesting enough, I was pretty sure I was just imagining this, but I saw a log cabin, but the logs were going vertical rather than horizontal. And a reader later told me that's the way the French built their cabins. I didn't realize at the time. So she said, oh, okay. She says, I'm still thinking I'm just imagining this for her. She said, okay, go in the cabin. What do you see? I didn't see anything. I thought, this is her daydream, not mine. I didn't see anything. She said, okay. She said, imagine a nice big meal. Okay. Imagine if you have a meal and enjoy. He said, eat the meal and enjoy yourself. I said, okie dokie. She said, all right. She says, now we're going to leave the cabin. She said, there's 12 steps leading down to the valley. So I want you to go down these steps and I'm going to count as you go down. So anyway, she starts as 12 and it starts getting slower. Because 11, 10. I'm thinking, oh my God. Because I'm your by sea state hypnotist doing this as 8, 7 type thing. So I'm going along with it. I'm imagining myself walking down some steps and, she's counting. So interesting enough, when she got to 1, something happened. It was really bizarre. All of a sudden, wasn't imagining I was in a valley or trying to see what it looked like. I was in a valley. I mean, it was crystal clear. I could see everything as clear as I could see if I'd opened my eyes. And I knew what it was. I mean, I wasn't stupid. I realized I had been hypnotized. Now, interesting enough, I thought earlier in the day, I already thought I was much too strong to be hypnotized. I thought this not going to work. Only weak-minded people be hypnotized. But anyway, I realized that I'd been hypnotized because I was in this valley. I mean, now the interesting, I could still feel the chair underneath the couch underneath me. I could hear noises on the street outside, but at the same time, I was in this valley and it was just crystal clear. I could look and I could see veins on leaves. Then all of a sudden I could feel I saw the leaves move. I felt a breeze in my face. And I thought, well, it's just the air conditioning in the office is all this. So anyway, she said, okay. Said, what do you see? And I described the valley. I'm walking next to a little brook and everything. And she said, well, look down, describe yourself. So I looked down. I see a pair of really dirty, gnarly feet, and I'm wearing fur. And looks at my left hand I'm carrying, looks like a piece of a tree limb. Now I knew what this was. Everybody's seen movies about cavemen. Everybody's seen this. And come on, I wasn't that all surprised. But interesting enough, I didn't realize that I listened to tape later on. She told me at the bottom of the stairs, said, go back to your very first life. I didn't remember at the moment her saying it. It says, go back to your very first life on Earth. So anyway, I knew what this was. I mean, come on, everybody's seen movies and everything. I didn't think too much about it. So, but then suddenly I'm walking along the brook. I'm talking to Dr. Griffith about a thing. And all of a sudden, it's like the person's body I was in, I was thinking his thoughts. I could think, because all of a sudden I said, I live here. I lived in a cave up on the edge of the valley. And I didn't know why I said that. Also, it just blurted it out without knowing why I said it. And she said, okay. I said, okay. She said, go to the cave. I said, okay. But there's enough, rather than walking the cave, just all of a sudden it's thinking, it blinked out for a second. Now it's at the mouth of a cave. Now, before I walked to this cave, it was kind of interesting because before I walked in, this person was not terribly hygienic, had an awful stench to this cave. And I thought, I'm thinking, dang, where'd that come from? I knew. I said, this Bob, you're hypnotized. This is where it come from. So I walk. I go in the cave. We talk about what I do and all that. So she's fine. Said, okay, now go to your death. And apparently, in your past life hypnosis, your death is one of the most important parts of your life because I guess you get a chance to see what you've done and how what you accomplished or not. So also, I said, okay. So again, it comes small. You go into like a fog. It's like a gray fog for 2 or 3 seconds. Then all of a sudden, I wasn't in a man's body anymore. I'm floating above it in the cave, and I'm looking down. I can see this little skinny guy. He's covered in furs on the floor of the cave. He's shivering and coughing. He's really, really sick. So the doctor said, okay. Now I explained. I told her what happened when he died. She said, now go out of the cave. Says, do you see a light? And sure enough, above the valley, there was a big bright light. She said, okay, before you go to the light, tell me what you learned from this life. I said, I learned from this life what it's like to be alone. Again, I'm talking. I don't have a clue what I'm going to say. I'm just talking. And it's obviously the other person I'm talking to. I have no idea what I'm going to say. I said, this life was about being alone. I had nobody in this life. I was totally alone during this life. She said, okay. She said, I want you to go in the light and go to a life where you did have someone. So anyway, I went up to the light And again, there's 3 or 4 or 5 seconds of gray fog, nothing happening. Then all of a sudden, I'm in a scene. I'm on a street, but I don't know if people are old enough to remember. Back used to be in an old movie in the days that sometimes in the movies you go there and it'd be all blurry, everything, all the scene blurry. Then suddenly they make it sharp. That's what this was. For the first 3 or 4 seconds, I'm on this city street, and so everything blurry, and all of a sudden it became sharp again. Now I'm on the street. I can feel the sun beating down on me. Now I'm in a closed office, closed darkened office, but I could feel the sun beating down on me. And Dr. Griffin asked me to describe, and I said, well, this is probably, said I'm on a street, but it looks like the late 19th century because there's gas lights and there's no cars. There's only horse-drawn carriages. But I'm in a city. There's tall buildings both sides. And she said, "Look down. What are you wearing?" So I looked down. I'm dressed pretty well, and I have a fancy walking stick. I told her it's not a cane. It's a walking stick. She said, oh, "Okay." So what are you doing here? I said, "I'm going to meet a woman." She says, "Okay, we'll go to meet her." So anyway, I see myself meeting this woman in a red dress, a very beautiful woman in a red dress. She says, "Where do you go?" I said, "Well, we go to a sidewalk cafe." We go to a sidewalk cafe, and she said, "What do you order?" I said, "I ordered wine," and she ordered some kind of special water. And I'm thinking at the time, yeah, I had an impression that men this time didn't drink wine; they drank whiskey. Real men. I'm not a complete that big a historian, but I thought it was kind of useful. A man ordered wine. And we talked about this a bit. She said, "Okay." She says, go to your next scene. Go 5 years forward in your life. So I go to 5 years forward. I'm in a hallway of what looked like an apartment building. And I'm having an argument with this woman. We're arguing about money. And I told her, I assume this is my wife, but we're having a really kind of strong argument. Now I get tired, just turn around and walk away. And I walk down into the hall and into a room. And it's an artist studio. The room it's a long room. One wall to the right is all windows. There's a skylight above, and on the wall just dozens of unsold paintings. And I describe all this to Dr. Griffith. Now all of a sudden I tell her I'm a painter. I know again I'm not saying this. Bob Snow's not saying this. Whoever body I'm inside is saying this. It's just kind of funny because usually when you talk, you got at least a second or so before you say what you're going to say. You know what you're going to say. This is blurred. I just kept blurting down. So we talked about this a bit after I described the room to her and everything. She said, "Okay, I'll go 5 years forward." So I went to 5 years forward. I'm at a party, and for some reason I'm the centerpiece of the party. Everybody's come up, congratulate me, pat me in the back. I have no idea what it's for. I just know it's a party, but I could feel that this person was immensely happy. This was a moment of his life, one of the crowning moments of his life, how happy he was. And again, I had no idea what I'd done or how, but everybody was congratulating me. So Dr. Griffiths told me, so, "Okay, I want you to go to the next scene." But I didn't because I don't know. You think about your life, how many times in your life do you have a moment of intense happiness? Maybe your marriage or your birth of your first child, but you don't have that often in life. And I could feel this person's feeling and how good it felt, how happy he was. So it took maybe 2 or 3 times. Dr. said, "Well, go to 5 years, go 5 years." So, okay. So the next scene, also I'm in a large garden, and I'm feeling really kind of sad. I don't know why, but it's a huge, huge garden, just acres and acres. And I'm walking, feeling kind of sad. And I'm telling her about that. She said, "Okay." So I want you to go to your death. Tell me what you see. So I go. So anyway, I go, but I see myself laying on a bed, and I'm dying. Then I die, and I see myself. Everybody's seen these movies. Everybody knows how it happens. You're a ghost. You float out of your body, and you float up to this thing. All ghosts do. Everybody's seen all of these movies. So I say that's what I saw myself doing. I saw myself floating, and interesting. When I got out, I went to the roof of the building I was in. It was over a huge city. I mean, there were lights at the horizon in all directions. It's a huge, huge city where it was. As anyway, Dr. Griffin asked me, he said, "Okay, what did you regret in this life? What did you learn? What did you regret?" I said, "I regret that we didn't have children. We both wanted children, but my wife couldn't have children." So anyway, she says, "Okay." So I go into the light, but I didn't. Interesting enough, I say everybody sees stage hypnosis where they make you cluck like a chicken and dance around. That's not true. When you're in hypnosis, believe me, you're still in control. Because Dr. Griffin told me, he said, "All right, go into the light." And I didn't. I said, I wanted to do something. So I see myself flying through these woods. And I could tell it was probably fall. It was late fall because the trees still had leaves on them, but it was a cold, brisk night. The next thing I know, I'm on the second or third floor of this mansion, and I'm looking in the window. And there's a big fire in the fireplace. Nobody's in the room, but there's fire in the fireplace. And there's a painting over the fireplace. It's a still life. It has a bottle, it's fruit, and a big sun behind it. And I told Dr. Griffin, I want to see one of my paintings. I wanted to see it one more time before I left. She said, okay. So finally after that, went to the light. She says, now I want you to go to a life when you were a female. I thought, yeah, that's going to happen. Yeah, sure. But it did. But anyway, so again, I had 4 or 5 seconds of gray fog. And all of a sudden, I'm standing in the woods again, but it's not a valley. It's a low level woods. And the trees are not like the trees in the valley was. And I look down, and I can see I am a female, and a young female. And I thought, what the hell? You know, okay. So she said, okay, I described what I was at. I'm standing in front of this structure. It's a beautiful round structure of pillars, and there's an altar in the middle. And again, all of a sudden, the person body I'm in is talking. And she said, yes. I told her, yes, I work here. I'm one of the girls that work here. We bring things down to the altar. And I told her, we're all young, pretty girls. We're all virgins. She said, okay. She said, I want you to go 5 years, go 5 years again, go ahead 5 years. So in 5 years, I see myself, I'm in a wagon. And it was an ox pulled a wagon. I look to my left, there's an old man sitting next to me. Look to the right, there's a young girl. Yeah, young, probably 3 or 4 years old. But interesting enough, I recognized her for somebody from this present life. It was my stepdaughter for this present life, but it wasn't the teenager I'd seen off to high school that day. It was the same girl, the same age she was when her mother and I got married. And I thought, dang, you know. But apparently, I told Dr. Griffin, apparently, since I obviously wasn't a virgin any longer, they had either sold or given me to this old man. And he took us to a farm. But he didn't live very long. He didn't live very long at all. Of course, I had to leave then once he died. And I took my daughter back to the temple, and I gave her away to the temple. And I knew what I was. I mean, it's funny because I'm telling Dr. Chris what's happening, but in my mind, I can sense some real guilt about this. I'm not giving her away because I'm keep telling her, well, it's for the best for her. She'll have a better life here. She will be, all this stuff you try to justify. But I could feel in my heart and in my chest that I was giving away because it'd be a lot easier for me if I didn't have a little girl tag along. And I felt this terrible guilt. I mean, it's like a block on my chest. This terrible guilt about giving her away. So anyway, Dr. Griffin, we talked about this life. The whole time I did it was terrible. I felt awful feelings of guilt. And I thought, I'm thinking to myself, Bob, this is stupid. You don't know, this is all make believe. But I couldn't get rid of that guilt. So anyway, Dr. Griffin finally took me to my death. And what had happened, I had to go move to some kind of fishing village. And I died in a fishing accident. I could feel the nets wrapped around me. And interesting enough, at the end of my death, just before my death, I could taste salt water. And I thought, that is crazy. So anyway, after this, Dr. Griffith said, okay, now I want you to go to life just before your present one. Go to the life you were before you were Bob Snow. And believe me, I was glad to go to life in this one because I had this terrible, terrible guilt feeling, just awful. And I kept thinking how foolish it was because this is make believe. But I did. So I went to light immediately. Fortunately, of course, once you get the light, that life's gone. So anyway, I go to the light for 4 or 5 seconds. I'm in the great fall for 5 seconds. And I come back out, I'm in the body of the artist again. I thought, it's interesting. But I'm painting a portrait. But the interesting part about that, I painted a portrait of a hunchback woman. I thought was really, how many hunchback women have ever wanted to be painted? But the woman had it really bad. So I'm painting the painting, and I'm telling Dr. Griffin, I don't like painting portraits. I hate painting portraits, but I need the money. I could feel this person had a desperate need for money. And so anyway, we talked about this. Well, Dr. Griffin said, okay, go 5 years forward. And all of a sudden, I'm in it looks like a club or a gallery or something. And I'm having this vicious argument with someone about my painting, about there being bad lighting for my painting. And then she said, we're talking about that. I'm just really having a fit because my painting, the lighting is not good on my painting. She said, okay, after this, go 5 years. So we go 5 years further, and I'm in a garden. And she said, okay, I can hear piano music coming from the house at the garden. She said, well, go on in the house. And she asked me, she said, where are you at? And I instantly answered, France. I had no idea. Where it was. But the guy's body I was in knew. He said, France. So I walked into the house, and my wife is there, and she's playing the piano. And people are standing around, and she's playing the piano. So we talked about that for a while. And she said, okay, now go 5 years further. So I go back into the gray fog again, and all of a sudden, before I get to the next 5 year thing, all of a sudden I felt this terrible, terrible sadness. I mean, I almost was ready to cry. I couldn't understand. And I said, she died of a blood clot. The doctor said she died of a blood clot. I had no idea who I was talking about, but whoever this person was, she was obviously extremely important to the artist, extremely important. I almost wanted to cry, and I thought, this is silly. Well, by that time, the recorder had come along, clicked off with a loud click, and opened my eyes, and it was over. That was the end of it. Now, now I'm back to the real world, and I'm kind of embarrassed and flustered because I had gone there just sure that nothing would happen, that this is all foolishness. You wouldn't see anything. But the problem, not so much of what I saw, but the vividness of it. Everything was just as clear as I was looking as I came out of it. It was just as clear as that. So anyway, Dr. Griffiths talked to me. He says, well, can you relate to anything you saw, just stuff your today's life? And I really couldn't. At the moment, I was just too flustered at the moment. I really couldn't. And I made some kind of excuse about it. I need to think about it and all that. So I wrote her a check for the session and got out of there real fast. But I went and sat in my car for a while. I didn't leave. And I'm trying to think, what was this? What could this have been? I mean, I wasn't even surprised about being hypnotized. But the problem, my point was the vividness of it all. I mean, if I closed my eyes, I could still see the scene. Actually, for a couple of years after the regression, if I closed my eyes, I could still see every scene. I could see the brush strokes in the painting of the Hunchback Woman for a couple of years. I could go back and see it all. And that bothered me. It really bothered me because I couldn't imagine anything being that vivid that wasn't real. But I sat there probably a half an hour in the car trying to figure out what the hell just happened. And finally, I decided, well, Bob, it's got to be your imagination. You just pulled up memories, fragmented memories from your subconscious. You brought them, you fixed them into a story to please the psychology. That's it. I said, that's it. I'm just going to forget about it. Well, that's easy to say, but I couldn't. For the next, oh God, probably a month and a half, I just obsessed. I would think about it 50 times a day or more. I would think about it constantly. And I closed my eyes. I could see the scenes. And it was really bugging me about where this come from. And I kept telling myself, don't you, Bob, you can't explain it. Don't worry about it. But I couldn't because as a police officer, I was in charge of homicide for a lot of years. And I've seen what happened to people who are obsessed, who are really deeply obsessed. It very seldom turns out good for them. So I decided, okay, Bob, after about a month or so, I thought, I need to stop this. How do I do it? I said, I need to find one of the two paintings I'd seen, either the still life in the mansion or the portrait of the Hunchback Woman. I said, if I could find those, you'll remember, oh, that's where I saw that. You saw that at an art gallery or, at a mall, art exhibit at a mall or something. You'd seen it. And they said, that's what I have to do. I have to find them. If I could do that, then I would I'd explain everything that happened. These are just fragmented memories. And you put the painting in there type of thing. So that's what I decided to do. I decided to go to the public. This was, by the way, this was in early 1900. I think it was 1992, as a matter of fact. And this was pre-internet days. Now, in these days, when you did research, you couldn't just type in a search engine. You had to actually go places and pull books off shelves. So I went to the public library, and I thought I would go through all their art books until I found one of the paintings. I figured they had to be halfway famous. I was no artificial. I don't know that much about art and all. So I figured to remember these paintings, I had to have seen them somewhere. They had to be at least semi-famous for me to have seen them. So I figured I'll go through the art books in the library, and I'll find one of them, and I'll say, oh, that's where it was. Then it's all explained. This is not real. This is just fragmented memories brought back. And so, there was a couple of stumbling blocks. And one, I had no idea they had so many art books. There were hundreds and hundreds of art books in that public library. But I sat down. I went through every single one of them. Didn't find either painting. Now it started really bugging me. I thought, how is that possible? How's that possible? I can read painting. They're not in these hundreds of art books. So I decided for something else. So I started visiting bookstores, Borders and Barnes and Noble, what have you. I forgot because they had books that weren't in the library, art books. So I went there. I went through books after book after book. Didn't find any painting. So I went to a couple of art galleries in Annapolis and asked that I described the paintings to the art dealers. And they told me the same thing. Unless it's a real famous painting, there is no central registry for paintings. You just have to call around people at different art galleries, around the country to see anybody seen the painting you want. I didn't realize this. Of course, this is pre-internet days, so you couldn't just find things that easy. So I finally said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to I went to a New Age bookstore in Indianapolis, incognito, obviously, and I got a couple books on past life regression. I thought maybe if I studied up past life regression, then I could understand what happened. Maybe they explained part of it. So I bought a couple books on past life regression, and I read up on. It's kind of interesting because I have an awful lot of people that had experiences similar to mine, but there was no explanation for it. But then I found one book that would teach you self-hypnosis. And it had a long script, similar to Dr. Griffith, a lot of imagery. Everything she asked, she wanted to describe it completely, a lot of imagery. So I took it home and tried it. And I tried it probably 10 times. It's a lot harder than you think. Hypnosis is not easy at all. But twice during that time, I could feel myself going into the state I was in Dr. Griffith's office. But it only lasts for maybe 2 to 3 seconds. And I would see the number 1917. And it could blip, it'd like snap off. Did it twice, I saw that number. So finally, I decided, well, what the hell are you going to do, Bob? What's left? Now, I was in charge of homicide. We had a really good clearance rate in Indianapolis. We had an 83% clearance rate when I was in charge of homicide, which is exceptional for a city our size. But that still means 17% of the people who commit murder get away with it. You don't solve 17% of the cases. And usually because you don't have enough evidence. And I figured that's this case. We simply do not have enough evidence. I don't have enough evidence. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to have to shelf it and just forget about it. That sounds easy. But anyway, that's all I could do. I couldn't think of any other path to take. So I just put it on the shelf and tried to forget about it. I didn't, but I tried to forget about it. Well, it got toward April the next year. I had gone to see Dr. Griffith in July, I believe, of 92. And so the next April, my wife and I were getting ready to go for our anniversary. And we wanted to go somewhere neither of us had been. So one day she called me at work and says, how about New Orleans? And that's fun. I'd never been to New Orleans. She hadn't either. I thought, well, that's like a fun vacation. We'll do it for our anniversary. So I booked some tickets to the airplane, got a rental car, had a hotel room. So we went down to New Orleans. Now, my wife, who incidentally was a police officer also, she was a child abuse detective for a lot of years. She's a real history buff. And boy, you can't throw a rock in New Orleans without hitting something historical. We visit old plantations, the battlefield 1812, and all these different things. But and at nighttime, we go into the French Quarter and listen to bands, have some drinks and all that. But I noticed something interesting. When we were going into the French Quarter at nighttime, there are all kind of really interesting stores down in the French Quarter, like memorabilia stores, art galleries, antique stores. So the last day we were there, our plane didn't leave till the evening. And we'd already seen, God, I couldn't stand another mansion, another plantation. We'd seen probably 20 plantations by then. I said, why don't we go window shopping in the French Quarter? And we went looking at all these places. And, my wife, we went in place stores. She tried to buy them out just about. But anyway, we went to a bunch of antique stores, which was nice. And finally, we got down to down the street. Look at, I'm trying to think of the name of the street in French Quarter, Royal Street. I'm sorry, it's Royal Street. Well, Royal Street in those days was all art galleries. So we started at one end, and they had some beautiful, beautiful paintings in these galleries. But I noticed as we went down the street, the galleries are getting smaller, the paintings more obscure. When you finally got to the street, at a gallery at the very end of the street, we walked in, and there was a 2-story, and it said art, modern art upstairs. My wife, modern art fan, I've never been. She was, so she went upstairs. So I'm walking along the hallway in the first floor. I'm looking at various paintings. I didn't recognize any of the paintings or the artists. And I'm walking along, looking, and I get to the corner, and there's an easel. There's a portrait standing on the easel. And I walk by and glance at it. Then I stopped, like I'd walked into a glass wall. It was the portrait of the hunchback woman. Now let me tell you something. I've been a police officer for 38 years. I've been in a lot of frightening situations, a lot of scary, frightening situations. The difference being, as a police officer, you have training and experience in these situations. You know what to do, how to respond. This one I didn't. I mean, I'm looking, and I'm thinking, no, this can't be. I mean, come on. What are the odds of me seeing this and then running into an art gallery in New Orleans? Come on, what's the odds? It's not happening. Now, things like that might happen on TV. It might happen in the X-Files or in the movies. They don't happen. Things like that don't happen in real life. So I'm telling myself, okay, this looks like the painting. It's not the real painting. It's similar or not. But I told you, this time I could still see it. I could close my eyes and I could see the painting I was painting. And it was the same painting, brushstroke for brushstroke. I had no idea. I stood there for probably, I had no idea what to do. I'm kind of fumbling with the idea, maybe I'm not really here. Maybe I'm in a nursing home. I got, tubes in my nose and wires run out. I'm just in a nursing home. I'm just hallucinating, because things like this don't happen. They just don't happen in real life. And I had no idea what to do. I'm fumbling all kind of how could this be type thing. Well, I was standing there long enough that a salesman saw me staring at the painting. He, of course, broke into my moments and said, "But you take a nice look over your fireplace." And I'm thinking, yeah, picture a hunchback woman by fire. I don't know my fireplace. But anyway, I said, I don't recognize the artist. Who's the artist of this? He said, well, hang on. I said, I have a little biography over here. So we went to the desk, and he fumbled through, and had maybe a short paragraph. Said the man's name was J. Carroll Beckwith. Now, I'd never heard J. Carroll Beckwith. So I look at the biography, and I noticed an awful lot of things that look similar to the Regression. I noticed he had died in 1917. I remember my cell phone was in 1917. And also, I had confirmed there definitely was the painting of a hunchback woman. And also, it said I found that the artist had lived in the 19th century. I told Dr. Griffith when I went to the first regression to the artist that it was the 19th century. Well, he was born in 1852, and he lived till 1917, but he'd also lived during the 19th century. And also, I found that he had spent some time in France. And I told Dr. Griffith that we are in France, and that he had won a number of awards for his painting. I remember being at that one party. Now this is really baffling. I'm trying to convince myself that there's some logical way to explain this. There has to be some logical way to explain it. But now it's fortunate because now I had information. I could go back to Indianapolis. I have more, because in any murder case, if we can't solve it, we just don't throw it away. We put it on the shelf. We called deactivate. Now, if new information comes up, we reactivate it. Well, that's what I was going to do with this right here. I just reactivate this case since I had the information about who the artist was and his birth and death date. So anyway, I come back to Indianapolis, and I go to the Central Library again, because again, there's no internet these days. So I go back to Central Library, and I asked the librarian for all the information she could find on J. Carroll Beckwith. I gave her his date of birth and death. Well, there was very, very little in Indianapolis. When she gathered everything she had, it probably wasn't maybe a half a page of information. But there's enough. I did find some more information that I'd seen in the regression. For example, he died. I said I thought it was fall when he died. Well, he died in October, last of October, and that also he died in a large city. He died in New York City. And I thought, well, okay, that matched. And also, it said that he painted portraits but didn't like doing it. He painted portraits because he needed the money. It also said that his paintings were full of bright sun and bright color. And I remember the still life over the fireplace had a sun, a lot of bright color in it. Now this is starting to, I'm still not, no way I'm convinced, but it's starting to bother me a little bit. So anyway, the librarian says, well, what you need to do is go up to the art museum, north side of Indianapolis. They have a much bigger art library than we do. Okay. I said, okay. So I go up there to the art museum, and I talked to the lady up there. And again, she tried to find stuff. There just wasn't that much for me. There simply wasn't that much, because he simply, she said he wasn't that famous. He was a mediocre painter who painted mostly portraits in his life because that's what he could sell. But he never really painted any landmark painting. No painting everybody said, oh, yeah, that's, like he would a Van Gogh or Monet would painting. He never painted anything like that. He was just mainly a portrait painter. But anyway, one of the things the lady found for the librarian at the art museum found for me was a reference, and it come from it said it was actually down the footnote. It said this information came from the diaries of J. Carroll Beckwith that are on hold at the National Academy of Design, New York City. I thought, well, I knew right then what I needed to do then, because I'd already had 10 confirmations. I thought, come on, Bob, there's got to be some reasonable explanation. You got to find it. And what I was looking for at this moment wasn't more confirmation. What I was looking for is the one denying factor. If I could find, for example, I said that we didn't have children because my wife couldn't have children. If I found out that Parent Beckwith had 5 kids, and it's wrong. This is not a true memory. There's something wrong. Or if I could find he was a teetotaler, I said he drank wine, then it's not real. There's something wrong. That's what I was looking for. So what I decided to do is I called the National Academy of Design in New York City and asked them about looking at his diaries. And they said, oh no, we never let them out. They're much too fragile. They said, but we have had microfilm made of them that you can get for the American Art, the Archive of American Art at the Smithsonian, microfilm the diaries. And so I said, good. So I ordered them. I thought, good, I'm going to look at this and see, maybe I can explain something. And again, I'm looking for the one denying factor, because this, this is not something I'm going to accept just on a few confirmations, because any person's life, you could make a number of correct guesses if you know them that well, just by luck. So anyway, while I'm waiting to hear from them, I listened to my tape again, and I wrote down all the things I'd said during regression that could be proved or disproved. I found I had 28 things. Now I'd already confirmed 10 of them, but I still left 18 that might be wrong. In which case, this is not a real memory. If they're wrong, it's not a real memory. So anyway, I wrote down I had 28 things I could prove, disprove. So anyway, I got a call from the Central Library, said the tapes have come. So I went there, and it was kind of disappointing. Not disappointing, but more I didn't know what to do, because I found out that Beckwith started his diary at age 19, and he ended the day before he died at 65. There were 17,000 pages. Now, what the hell do you do with 17,000 pages? But I did find interesting enough that he'd also written an autobiography. In 1917, he was living in Santa Barbara, California. He was really ill. And he wrote an autobiography. I thought, well, that'd be great if I read that. Unfortunately, he didn't have, again, he started the year he died. And so he only went up to the age of 21. So it didn't help me. But then I found that someone I have no who did had exerted part of his diary and typed it. It was all typed. So I thought, this must be important. So I thought I'd read it, type it. And one thing I found, that it said he was actually studying, and he actually got to study in Paris and be an artist. And during one of the summer breaks, he went to Venice. And he said while he was in Venice, he lived on wine and burnt eggs. So again, it's one more confirmation. And I also found that he had no children. On October 24th, 1888, I think it was, his wife had a really serious miscarriage, and they couldn't have children after that. Here's enough. That's 30 years today before Beckwith died. So now I'm thinking, you think, what are you going to do? So I didn't know. I really was at the point now. I've got 12, 13 things of these 28. And also, I'd also found that he had visited a large garden. I thought this obviously my garden out with this. He had done a number of paintings in the Garden of Versailles. So now I got 13 confirmations to 28. No denying factor yet. I wasn't really sure where to proceed from this. So I thought, my wife she was a detective, and really, really very good detective, excellent detective. I thought, it's time for me to tell her what I'm doing. At this time, I wasn't writing books. I was writing articles and short stories. And I had sold over 100 of them to various national magazines, but I hadn't done anything for quite a while because I was doing so much stuff on Beckwith. So I thought, my wife, number one's going to want to know what the hell I'm doing. Well, I'm not producing any articles or short stories. And so I thought I'd tell her about this, and maybe I, see what she'd get her input into it. So she thought I was nuts. I mean, basically, I told her what I was investigating, what I found, and she basically said, "Oh, nuts." And I'm thinking, hang on. So look at my information, look at everything I've uncovered, and tell me. So she read all the stuff I'd uncovered, but she basically said, "Bob, there is a book or something about articles about Beckwith. You just haven't found them. You read them one time and you forgot them." I had found absolutely nothing. So she said, "I'm going to investigate this. I will find it." And actually, to tell you the truth, this is what I was hoping for. Because one of my biggest admonishments to my detectives when I was in charge of homicide and I was also in charge of organized crime, was don't get personally involved in your cases. If you get personally involved in cases, you get tunnel vision. You lose your peripheral vision. You can only see one thing if you get personally involved. And believe me, I was really personally involved in this case. So I needed a fresh set of eyes who also wanted to disprove it, who was also a good detective. My wife just told me she was going to look at it. I thought, that's great. That's exactly what I wanted. But interesting enough, she went a month or two and couldn't find absolutely nothing more than I found. But she basically told me, okay, she couldn't find anything. She said, she needs to shut up about it. She said, you're a police captain. Police captains don't go spouting off stuff about past life. It's not accepted. It won't be accepted in the police department. Shut up about it. And the more I thought about it, I thought, you know what? She's probably right. I probably ought to just, let it keep it quiet and let it go. So I set the diaries back, the backfill back, and I thought I just need to get on my life and forget about it. Because you're right, being a police captain, you're kind of the core of the police department. You're the stable part of the police department. There's only at the end of the time we had 1,600 officers. There's only 22 captains. So you're really the backbone of the department. So I did that. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm almost to write articles again. I was going to write articles about line of duty deaths for police department, how police departments could handle line of duty deaths. Well, we'd had a police officer killed in line of duty just probably about 3 or 4 weeks earlier. So I got in contact with the first person to the scene, who happened to be another police captain. And I consider her, she was an extremely stable, reliable person. I asked her, I was just interviewing for my article. Okay, what did she see when she's there? What had happened? She's telling me about getting there. And then she all of a sudden she's telling me the story, and she tells about having an out of body experience. And I was kind of stunned because I had never heard anything like that before. And she said, well, I was dealing with the body of the officer, and he'd been shot in the chest with a shotgun, and he was obviously dead. And but she said, I suddenly realized I'm very vulnerable. I don't know where the shooter is, and I'm here, no cover or anything. She said, the next moment, she said, I saw myself, above the body, floating above the body, and looking down. She said, I could see myself, touching, moving around and everything, but it wasn't in my body. And then she goes on a story about how with the ambulance got there, and so the police were coming to see, she went back. And I thought that was really, I had never heard any stories like that ever in the police department. I had never heard stories like that. So anyway, I thought that it was very unusual. So a week or two later, I'm in federal court. We were testifying. Now in federal court, the witnesses don't get to sit in the courtroom. You're not allowed to hear what's going on. You got to sit in a separate room. You're not allowed. They don't make sure you don't want to get prejudiced by what you hear in the court. So there are about 3 or 4 of us police officers sitting in a room, and the police officers get together like they tell war stories. That's all they do. They always tell war stories. So this other police captain I'm sitting with was telling a story about when he was a young detective. He was him and his partner in a drugstore buying something, and a guy run in and said, hey, some people hold up the supermarket next door. So him and his partner run back out there. And they go into the supermarket, and sure enough, there's 3 guys in ski masks and shotguns holding the supermarket. And when they hold a man yells, hey, they're cops, kill him. So they're backing out of the store, and they're shooting each other backing out of the store. He said he got to the parking lot, and all of a sudden he's above himself. He said he's floating above himself. He assumed that he had died, which is looking down to see what had happened, how he died. Excuse me there. But anyway, he said he basically saw the whole thing from above. So anyway, he went back to the body eventually once the gunfight was over. And again, I never heard anything like this. I was just really stunned. Excuse me. So anyway, after that, a week or so after that, I heard a story about a supposedly haunted house in Annapolis. Yeah, stories like this. Yeah, hear them, you don't believe them. So I got a hold of the sergeant who had the scene and got him off and closed the door. Basically, he wanted to know what had happened. And he told me, he says, Captain, you can't tell anybody what I said. Don't use my name. He said, we got to run to the house, and I happened to be close. So I went to the scene first, and a lady come around the house, and a dinner plate, ceramic dinner plate, come out behind her. He figured, domestic disturbance, husband, wife, boy, white woman and boyfriend fighting. So he got with the woman. He said, what's going on? She said, the house has gone crazy. She said, the house has gone crazy. So the officer did not believe her and went in the house. Them and 2 officers who arrived to see, they said things would fly off shelves. They'd see something fly off the shelf and just crash with nothing to throw it. So they saw a big boom box on top shelf fall on the floor, just around where cups would fly off and break. Now they got scared. They said they got scared. They went back out of the house. They called for the chaplain. Well, the chaplain got there and did some prayers and what have you. Nothing happened. Well, I didn't realize this, but every diocese, the Catholic Church, has an exorcist on staff, a person who could deal with this sort of thing. They called the local diocese. They sent a priest out, and he did some kind of ceremony over it, and it stopped. But the people at the home were talking. They asked the officers, please don't tell anybody about this. Because we'll have every nut in the United States camped on our doorstep, which is probably true. And the officers were kind of feeling that way too. They didn't want to tell anybody either because they think everybody think they were nuts. So anyway, after I heard these 3 people talk about these things, I thought, this is silly. These people can talk about them, paranormal things. I can too. So I thought, I'm at that time, I was a writer. I was driving, so I thought this would be a good thing to write a book about. It'd be a really good thing to write a book about. So I ordered the microfilm back, and they had hard copies made of it. All 17,000 pages had it, because there's no way they'd only give you 2 weeks of tape. And you work on a wax machine, you couldn't print off enough pages to do it. So I had took it and had it all made to hard copy. But I also knew something I needed to do. I needed to go back to New Orleans, and at least if I didn't buy the portrait, at the time it was like $5,000. But paintings are like used cars. You never pay what's on the window. That's just a suggestion. But anyway, I thought if nothing else, just get a photograph of it to prove it existed. Because you're telling the story, people want to know about the hunchback woman. Is that true? So I went back to New Orleans and went back to the art store. But this had been quite a while. This had been a while. It was closed. There was no art store there anymore. The art gallery had closed. So being a police officer, do what police officers do, I started canvassing the neighborhood to find out what happened. And I finally found the art store who had bought the inventory for the closed one. And I told him about their paintings. Yeah, I remember the painting. I said, okay, I'd like to, just, talk to the owner, get a picture. But I found something really interesting. Art dealers religiously guard the identity of their clientele for several reasons. And one, they don't want other art galleries to know who they're selling to because they'll be stealing as customers. And they don't want people to know this person has a large value items in their home. The only thing he did, he gave me a little pre-printed card, said, it had my name, address, telephone number, said, fill this out, I'll send it to the owner, and if they're interested, they'll contact you. I did that, I never ever heard from him. Never heard from him. So anyway, I got back home. I had the hard copy, 17,000 pages. So I got myself a big magnifying glass, a notepad, and I sat down and took a little over a year, but I read every single page. Now, reading diary is not easy because Beckwith had a tendency to write in pencil and to scribble. Remember, one time in his diary, he talked about how he went back to read something last year and he couldn't read it. So, and the bad thing about diaries is you don't put a lot of information. You just mention an event to stir your memories, so then you'll remember what happened, type thing. But I did. I ended up reading every single page, and again, I'm looking for the big denying factor, the one thing that couldn't be true, so it's not true. But as I feared, and what happened, I kept finding one little thing after another. For example, I found about his wife had a miscarriage. They couldn't have children. I told you I felt this desperate need for money, and when I was in regression, my God, this man was a whiner. Every second, third page of diary was whining about needing money. And actually, if you look at his finances, he was actually in pretty good shape financially, but he just whined constantly about needing money and how much he hated painted portraits, but he needed it. And also, I found in the diary that they had a piano in their house, and also they had a summer home in the Catskills. They were a close neighbor of Mark Twain up to the Catskills. And that's how the guy needs the money. He's got a summer home in the Catskills. And also, in one place, he describes his studio. He describes it as a long room with one wall, all windows, and a skylight above with lots of unsold paintings. I also found all kind of references to him drinking wine, which turned out was kind of unusual for a man in his time. But he said he'd been in France for 6 years at art school, and he had developed a taste for wine in France. But anyway, each time I found out he did carry a walking stick, a fancy walking stick. But each thing kept one after another. But finally pushed me over the edge to realize this is true. You're not going to find a denying factor. On December 5th, 1886, I told you, just before the regression was over, I'd said she died of a clot. Doctor said she died of a blood clot. And on December 5th, 1886, his mother was in church and died of a stroke caused by a blood clot. Now, I think that was it. That was the one that pushed me over. I thought, well, come on, Bob. You can guess a lot of things about a man's life. You ain't going to guess what his mother died of. It's just not possible. And I think that was one that finally pushed me over. It really did. Now, interesting enough, in his diary, he remembered a number of times about working on his scrapbooks. He said, night I had stuff scrapbooks. I couldn't find where they were. And that was interesting, this investigation. Occasionally, I'd have information just dumped in my lap from nowhere. It'd come out of nowhere, the information dumped in my lap. For example, when I was looking for the Hunchback Woman painting, I talked to an art dealer. He said, well, I don't know. He said, let me give you the phone number of an expert I use on American art. Apparently, there's a lot of forgery in American art. She probably know about it. So I called her, and we're talking about the painting. And out of the blue, she said, you know, his scrapbooks at the New York Historical Society, right? And I didn't. So I actually went to New York to look at them, and really there's nothing really big in them, other than what I already found in the diary. I found pictures of people he talked about. I found pictures of his wife playing a piano with friends standing around, which I'd seen in there. And I also found 8 articles in there about a squabble he had with the owner of the Catholic Club in New York City about bad lighting for his paintings. And he'd actually take the painting off the wall and took it home with him. Also, I had a little problem. According to his death certificate, he had died at 5 p.m. October 24th, New York City. But when I saw myself pass through the roof, it was dark. It was evening. And even New York in October doesn't get dark at 5 o'clock. I had to figure out what happened. There was an hour or two late. But when I read some articles about his death, his wife had put into scrapbooks later. And basically said what happened. He he thought he was in good health. He was taking a walk in Central Park and had a heart attack. And he had enough withdrawal to get a cab, take him home to the hotel. And he got upstairs with his wife and fell dead in her arms. Well, she had a fainting spell herself. At the time, they had to call a doctor for her. So as much as he loved her, I'm assuming he stood by till she was well before he passed through the roof. But now, you think, okay, I'm thinking, what did I learn from this life? And boy, you're looking back at life, you learn a couple of things. He had too big a desire for money. In the middle 1800s, he had an uncle who died, left him $10,000. Now, that was like a lot of money today. In the 1800s, $10,000 was a lot of money. Matter of fact, that's what he built the home in the Catskills with. He was not happy. He really always felt like he got cheated, that he should have got more money. I thought, my God, this guy had a terrible obsession. It kind of ruined his life. And also that when you have to accept change. Beckwith was an artist at a time when new types of art was coming in, modern art and various, Monet was big, and Impressionism was coming in. Beckwith stood firm against all of it. And he got trampled. I mean, he stood firm against anything but what he considered legitimate painting. And he could say he got run over because nobody else believed that but him. But anyway, interesting, one last thing here about it. When I was in New York City looking at scrapbooks, and I was trying to find the places he had been to and lived at, they were all gone. There was no place left. Where the hotel he died is now a park and what have you. But what happened is I was reading a research or a book about Beckwith, a little blurb in a book about him, and it said he died of suicide. And I thought, boy, I didn't see anything. That my question, is that true? How could that be? Because I didn't see anything. I thought, that might be the dying factor. So I called the medical examiner, chief medical examiner of New York City, and told him who I was, the commander of the homicide branch, and told him I needed a copy of a death certificate. And I thought he might have a question about why I wanted somebody who died in 1917, but he didn't. And he sent the death certificate to me, and it said he died of endocarditis, which is an infection of the heart valves. And interesting enough, if you look at the last 2 years of Beckwith's life, you can see the symptoms. You can see the symptoms of during the last 2 years of his life. But anyway, I noticed at the bottom of the death certificate, it said that he was buried in Kensington Cemetery in Valhalla, New York, which is a suburb of New York City. So my last day there, I thought, you're thinking, how cool it'd be? Come on, to go to your own grave. How many people have ever been able to do that? Go to your own grave. And I thought, how cool that'd be. So anyway, I went got a train, went up to Valhalla, New York, and went to Kensington Cemetery, which is a beautiful, beautiful cemetery. Just beautiful, all kind of beautiful mausoleums and all. So I went to the office and found out where he's buried at. They gave me a map. So I walk up to the grave. And I noticed as I start getting close to the grave, I'm having a panic attack. And I have no idea why. Now, when I was a rookie officer, you go in a lot of dangerous situations, you're brand new. I had some symptoms. My left knee would start shaking real bad. And of course, my palms are sweaty. I'd have electricity running out my arms. And I felt the same way as I approached his grave. And I thought, this is foolish, Bob. There's no spirits in his grave. Any spirits in his grave is inside me. But I couldn't help it. The whole time I stand at his grave, I'd have this terrible, terrible panic attack. Well, fortunately, I saw some men about 100 feet away working on some tripping hedges. So I went over and talked to them. I wanted to get a picture taken to show I wasn't scared, show how brave I was. But anyway, but finally, when I walked away from the grave, the panic attack was gone. I had nothing. So I asked them to take a picture of me standing at the grave. And it's funny, when they come back, it went all over again. It's a terrible panic attack, and I had no idea why. But I knew I just needed a dang picture taken, get out of here. I can't explain that. So anyway, excuse me again. I've had a number of people ask me, okay, what does this all mean in the scope of the world? What does this all mean? And I really can't tell you. I'm a cop. My job was investigation, and I was able to do it in this case. I had some things a lot of people couldn't do. You couldn't call the chief medical examiner of New York City and ask him for a death check. They probably wouldn't talk to you. But I used my investigative skills and my position to get everything done. So, but again, I'm a cop. I'm not a theologian or philosopher. So I really can't explain what I mean. I had to leave it up to them. That's where I'm at. I'd be happy to take any questions if they have if anybody has a question.
You're muted, Dan.
And I don't have the video.
Oh, can you see me?
Oh, there you go. I got it now.
Hey, thank you so much. That was an amazing story. And I absolutely love the vividness. Like you said, it was such a vivid story, a vivid experience, but the way you described it was just amazing. I know a lot of people here probably have experienced or tried past life regression. If you have, I imagine many of you have. I certainly have. We actually, Wendy Rose Williams is a past life regressionist who's in our group here tonight. But I think it's rare to have one that is so clear as the one you described, which is amazing. So we do have a couple questions.
Somebody told me one time. All right.
Oh, you were going to say, go ahead and finish your thought. Bob?
I think I'm frozen.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Okay. Your audio is good.
Am I on mute again?
Nope. Your audio is good. It's just your image is a little frozen.
Yeah,
so okay.
I keep looking frozen on the screen. So what's the question could I have?
This person is asking, it says, she's interested in past life regression. She's in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Yeah, if you are interested, we do, like I said, I could connect you. If you look in the group here, Wendy is a past life regressionist and does work remotely. So you can chat with her. If you look in the group here, you'll see her online. Wendy, maybe introduce yourself through the chat if you would. And let's look through here.
I see somebody asked if I had published a book about the police department and what happened. Well, actually, there's a second edition of my book called Portrait of a Past Life Skeptic, which tells, believe me, the police department was not amused. I did not go well at the police department. It did not go well at all. Believe me. It led some really serious consequences, basically. It basically kind of ended my career at that moment. Wow. I mean, I was told they can't fire anything. I was a mayor captain. They can't fire or anything. But they basically kind of wanted to put me away somewhere I couldn't make any noise, because I think they found it kind of embarrassing that a police captain would talk about this sort of thing.
Wow.
But again, if you buy the second edition of the book, which is called Portrait of a Past Life Skeptic, I tell all about my experience at the police department. See, somebody's asking about investigating that past life. Yeah. I had this idea, after my book was published, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to investigate other people's past life and see if I can come up with anything? So I contacted the IACP, was the International Association of Past Life Regression or what have you, and talked to them. And I actually gave a speech to their convention in Seattle in I think it was 2000. I gave it, and I asked for people to send cases to me so I could investigate. But what you find is, now what I had what people call a full sensory regression, where you can not only just see, but hear, but touch, you can feel, smell, and taste. And it was very clear. Most people's regressions are not that clear. Most of them are foggy, and they only have a very few facts. I mean, I got one guy told me he was a farmer in Iowa, Indiana, named John. Now that's not a lot of information to go from. I never could find one that had anything I could grasp onto. People always be very vague about where it was because they didn't see it then. I had one person talk about how his sister was drowning in the lake and he jumped in and saved her. They both drowned, type thing. But how do you go from that? I mean, there's no names or what have you. Just people, a sister and brother down in the lake. I really had no luck. I probably got maybe 50, 75 tapes. And I couldn't find any of them that would really bear investigation.
Did you ever go back to have another regression?
Actually, I did. I was really concerned about what I'd seen and everything. And I thought maybe I went back to Dr. Griffith and had a second one. I could explain about the artist. So I went to her and it went to the very same state I'd been before. But when she'd ask she'd say, about the artist, nothing would happen. Nothing would happen. I'd ask about it. I mean, I went to a couple of past lives. And again, they were so far back in history, they're not really, you can't really investigate and verify them. Yeah. But every time she'd ask about the artist, nothing would happen. And she basically told me, says, you already know everything you need to know. Now, at the time, I thought, no, I don't. But actually, as it turned out, I did. But I really couldn't find anything else. Nothing would come up about the artist. And again, apparently, I had what I need to know.
Wow. Super interesting. Yeah. So, what do you think about when you hear? I've heard of other people having past lives where they go and meet. Like I saw, there's this one. Was it a woman, a young woman who had a regression? Actually, she had memories that spontaneously came back of having died and like leaving her children, and the children were still alive. And she went and introduced herself to them and she at this point was like in her 30s and they were in their 70s, and said, I'm your mother, and knew all the stuff about them. And yeah.
In the West, that's not accepted at all. Now, if you go to the East, actually reincarnation is pretty well accepted in a number of other Far East religions, and they don't find it unusual at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the Western cultures, people look at it, they think, well, number one, like my wife, like, you're crazy, number one, or you're delusional. You've had too much drink. You're delusional. You've got your off your rocker type thing. So a lot of people don't take it very serious. If you say, well, I knew you, I'm your mother, type. I'm 25, you're 75. I'm telling you, I'm your mother. Nobody's going to take that serious.
So do you
not Western culture? They just do. They just don't.
If you had to take a guess, just personally for yourself, how many past lives do you think you've had?
Well, let's see. I went to 3 in Dr. Griffith. Mm-hmm. I went back to see her again. I went to 3 more. Now, my first one was a caveman. I'm assuming that I've had a whole bunch of them. I see somebody asked about another book. I've given a number of speeches at various conferences and meetings about this book. And I met a bunch of other people. As a matter of fact, I was on the Katie Couric show about this.
Oh, super
and it was
cool.
that was a fun type thing. So I met a lot of other people, but I haven't read everybody's book. And there's a lot of people say this book that I've read a bunch of them, but not everybody. So I really don't know everybody's cases.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I had a past life regression myself that I didn't think anything of, and then I was going to go tell a story about it, and I had a lot of details. I had a lot of information about the person. And I knew similar things, like they had never had children. I knew they were Catholic. I knew that I knew a lot of details from the regression. And I went to try to go and look up the name of what their job was and stumbled across the person. It was one of those things where all of a sudden it was just there and all the details matched. And if I counted them up, I had a lot but it just blew me away because it was the same thing as you just,
it is because I think most people going through regression are always doubting, is this true? Or is this, or is this just my imagination? On the Katie Couric show, they had actually hypnotized Katie. Now, it turned out Katie's always been interested in steamboats and everything. Now, interesting enough, the first regression we went back to was as a steamboat captain. I believe it was a captain. But she didn't. She was kind of doubtful that maybe she did that because she was interested in steamboats. Mm-hmm. But more than she'd be interested in steamboats now because she had been a captain in the past.
Yeah.
For example,
interesting.
My wife, I finally talked her into doing that. She thought she was nuts, but I wouldn't let up. I finally talked her into it. She's always been a huge Civil War fan. Now, guess where the first life she went to?
Oh,
it was during the Civil War. But again, she believes she only went to that past life because she knows so much about the Civil War from this life. And, you can't, how do you argue a person that said, no, it's really true? You can't.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Well, I absolutely love it. I mean, it really feels to me like the way that yours came together, the fact that you had the regression, that it was so incredibly vivid, and that all the details were put in your way to get you to right where you are right now, right? Where you were able to prove it right. And then you were motivated to write it into a book. That this feels very much like the whole thing was stitched together, that this was a large part of your purpose in coming, is to help people become used to this idea of past lives and to open people up to spirituality.
The odds of having a past life by someone that you could check all these things on is it's really astronomical, the odds of this. And people want to know if Beckwith was, he really wasn't. He was just a mediocre painter who made a mediocre living painting portraits. They say, well, why did he keep his diaries? And there's a real good reason. He was a social butterfly during the 1800s or 1900s. He knew everybody. He was good friends with Theodore Roosevelt, with Claude Monet, Sarah Bernhardt. He was, like I said, he was a neighbor of Mark Twain up in the Castle Mountain. So he has little anecdotes in his diaries about these people. Matter of fact, as my book came out, a lady contacted me who's writing a book about Mark Twain. Wanted to know if I could find anything interesting in the diaries about him, and I did, about him and Beckwith. and for her to use in her book. That's really the only reason they kept his diaries. He himself is not that important, but he knew everybody was everybody because he was a real social butterfly in those days. So he has interesting little anecdotes about all these famous people.
Wow. So Michael has a question. Michael, do you want to add your
Sure.
question?
It's not really a question. Just I read your book. It was last year actually, and I'm not a really good book reader. I don't know what stopped me reading books, but I was gripped with yours all the way along, and I don't even remember how I found it. I think I just found it on Amazon. But and I read the second edition. What I loved about the book was you dragged us along with your skepticism, and I think that really was endearing, your skepticism, because I think there's more skeptics on the planet than there is people who aren't.
Yep.
And how you approached it as a detective. And my background is in dream interpretation, and my friend who devised the system I use is also a detective. He was a detective in Scotland Yard. So I think it was that similarity made me say, I want to read this guy's book because I know what detectives are like. And I know their approach to things is different from other people's approaches. Like the way you say, I'm looking for something to disprove it. That's not how the rest of us look at stuff. But it was really good. And the fact that it destroyed your career in the police service also made it all the more credible for me, you know, because you couldn't let it go because it was too real, you know. So you didn't do it for money because it didn't help you that way. But I think the real message of the book is you're on this journey of trying to prove it's wrong, yet you know all the way along that it's not going to end that way. But anyway, just wanted to say thanks for appearing here. I was really delighted when I saw and had you booked.
Awesome.
Well,
awesome.
the point of the matter is, if you accept it, you have to admit to yourself everything you believed your whole life was wrong. That everything you've learned about life is wrong, and you have to be willing to say, I've been wrong my whole life. And all the people I used to think were kind of kooks and nuts, they were right and I was wrong. And because I used to really think people believed reincarnation were kooks before I got involved in this. So you can't just suddenly say, yeah, I accept this 100%. No, I was fighting it. I was fighting it the whole way because again, I had that the hard part, not proving it. The hard part is accepting what it means. How does this change your life? When you realize that life as you thought about it, because I was raised in the Methodist church and you were, I don't remember anything in the Methodist church about reincarnation, that's for sure. And how do you suddenly come to the belief that all your beliefs before this are wrong, that the world's not the way you thought it was, it's completely different. And that was the hard part for me, not just proving it, but accepting what it meant after I did prove it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I was so skeptical when I was trying to disprove it really, because you don't want to do this. It's a hard thing to rearrange your whole life because you suddenly realize that you were wrong in all your beliefs. You don't want to do that, but you just have to.
Well, I want to officially invite you to the Association of Kooks and Nuts. So we're very happy to have you with us. Robert, I want to add a link to your book to put it into the chat here.
Sure.
Just a moment here so that people can find it. And your book, the specific one on, and tell us the name, share with everybody the details of the book, the name of the book, the title of it.
Well, actually, the first book is called Looking for Carol Beckwith. It was my original book. It was I actually published in 1999. And it's nice. It has photos of the paintings and of all the people I talk about in the book. But then later, a lot of things happened after the book came out. Like I said, not great, happy things at the police department, but I knew, and a bad thing, I knew this was going to happen. My wife warned me it was going to happen. Even my agent warned me, because actually this hurt my writing career too. Because I'd been writing about true life, about crime. I wrote either true crime books or books about law enforcement, how to protect yourself, what SWAT teams do, child abuse investigation, this kind of thing. And she said, publishers are not going to take you seriously if you publish this book. But I had to. Just as so much information kept falling into my lap, and I felt what I had found was so significant, I could not just hide it. I simply had to publish the book, even though it meant the end of my police career. And it didn't really my writing career, but it took probably, after this book came out, I think it was 2005 before I got to my next book. It was like 6 years before I get my next book published. But like a lot of things, they forget about things. You know, they didn't want to publish my books right after the book. After a while, they forget about it, and I went back to writing again.
Yeah. Well, we are very glad you did. I just put a link to Bob's book in the chat. So if you guys want to check it out, it is a page turner, and super, super interesting. And I am super grateful. I think we're all grateful that you listened to it. Do you feel like because of this, you said it made you question everything? Have you continued on what you would consider to be a spiritual journey, or did you stop with past life regression?
Well, I mean, it changes your whole worldview about things. When I was worked at homicide, you see an awful lot of young people killed. You think, what is the point? This kid's 15 years old and he gets killed. You think, well, in Judeo-Christian belief, what's the point? If you only get one life, what was the point of this boy's life? He got killed. But if you realize this is just a succession of dozens or maybe hundreds of lives, it doesn't mean as much as you think. You go on to the next life, and hopefully you learn something from the previous life type thing. It has changed my outlook a lot, and it makes you feel more comfortable about things, especially because I went to, hundreds and hundreds of murder scenes, because as captain you had to, because the next morning a chief would call you about 8, 10 that you got in and want to know what happened last night. You have to be able to tell him. And so I would, you'd see, especially the children. I saw hundreds and hundreds of homicide victims, and they're all blurred now. The children don't. I can still see those cases where you have little children murdered, and you want to think, what was the point of this kid's life? If to have mom or dad killed it when it was a year old, or somebody, something bad happened to it. So again, it changes your viewpoint about life and makes you, and actually, I think it's a much better viewpoint, because a lot of times you come into a life, you think, boy, this life is rotten. I never had a chance. I've had bad luck my whole life, but bad things happen to me. You might be born with a handicap, or maybe you get cancer at 25 or something. But if you look at the overall scope of things, this is one life. Now, this life might be terrible. The life before or next life might be a really good one. You might be born into a wealthy family and have an easy life type thing. Everybody in past life, everybody's Donald Trump in one life, and everybody's an untouchable in Calcutta in another. You go through the extremes of that past lives, and this one may be crappy, but that don't mean all of them are going to be. You have to realize this is just one experience for you out of possibly hundreds.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm laughing because Andrea's just said, so are we for Association of Kooks and Nuts, is it the AKN or the AOKAN, which to come up with our acronym for our association. So, all right. Well, Bob, I want to thank you so much from all of us. It's been amazing to have you join us tonight. It's been, I think it's for all of us. All of us have gone through a spiritual journey on this path. And I think there is that moment where we all have to sort of face it and look at it and say, okay, I am one of the kooks now. And it's not easy, is it, to come out of the closet, but to see that, for you as a police detective, someone who had an awful lot to lose, and came out anyways and shared what was true, and you verified that it was true, which is, I think, really helpful for all of us to see that as a role model. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I hope to stay in touch. And again, don't forget to check out Bob's book, and I will see you guys next Wisdom Soup, which is going to be always the second Thursday of every month. And I'll be sending out an announcement. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.